Exeggutor was once a top-tier competitive Pokemon, a near auto-include at certain points in the Generation 1 overused metagame, and one of the key offensive momentum generators available in the format. Exeggutor was no slouch in the Gen 2 OU metagame either, maintaining its position and having access to some of the most powerful offensive tools you could get at the time. But this competitive success for Exeggutor would unfortunately be short-lived. This former Pokemon Titan that struck fear in the hearts of competitive players everywhere is now ranked in the ZU tier in the modern day. This is the lowest possible usage-based tier for competitive singles. How did this Pokemon fall off so significantly? From the very top to the very bottom. Let's find out. But first, an announcement. The inaction of Jimothy non-subscribers has become a worldwide crisis. Subscribe to the Jimothy Cool channel urgently to prevent the Pokemon Seadra from transforming into his horse form and turning into an unstoppable agent of pure evil. The fate of our world lies in your hands. Thank you. In Generation 1 OU, Exeggutor was once a member of a squad called the Big Four, alongside Snorlax, Tauros, and Chansey. These were 4 Pokemon considered so good that they needed to be on every team. In the modern metagame, the concept of the Big Four has fallen out of fashion a little bit, admittedly, and Starmie has actually surpassed Exeggutor as the number 4 Pokemon in the metagame by viability and usage. But Exeggutor still has that legacy associated with it, as one of the tier's historically strongest forces, and remains an extremely prominent Pokemon in Gen 1 OU, with its number 5 position. Exeggutor has access to Sleep Powder, one of the strongest status-inflicting moves in the game, even to this day. Putting an enemy to sleep prevents them from acting for multiple turns, and is a huge generator of momentum and a way to disrupt your foe. Exeggutor also has access to the fantastic move Explosion, which causes the user to faint, but on the way out they deal a massive physical attack to the enemy with an effective 340 base power, factoring in the defense halving effect. In the games before Gen 4, if a Pokemon faints, the enemy is unable to act, so this is also a form of disruption that can prevent the enemy from taking their turn, denying healing or setup. Psychic types are famously great in Generation 1 OU, and Exeggutor also happens to be a Psychic type. In Generation 1, the move Psychic is even stronger, with a 33% chance to lower the target's special stat by 1. The special stat in Gen 1 is basically special attack and special defense combined into one stat. So you are effectively lowering 2 stats by modern standards. In Gen 1, there are no Dark or Steel types in the game, so Psychic is extremely spammable, and with that secondary effect, it has immense value. With stab damage on Psychic and an impressive 125 base special stat, beyond just sleeping and exploding, Exeggutor hits really hard too. As for the 4th moveset, Exeggutor tends to run something like Double Edge or Hyper Beam. For physical mixed damage, Mega Drain is another option for a stab grass type attack which can threaten Rhydon. It should be easy to see why this Pokemon is so excellent with so many fantastic offensive tools at its disposal. Nothing in Gen 1 OU can quite generate momentum and pressure like Exeggutor can. In Gen 2, Exeggutor is not quite as powerful as it was back in Gen 1, but it remains a very solid and prominent member of the overused format. A lot changed for Exeggutor in this generation, and most notably the addition of the Dark type to the game was a nerf to Psychic types across the board, Dark type being immune to their attacks. The special stat was also split into 2 stats in Gen 2, special attack and special defense. And Exeggutor's special defense stat is only 65, so it's a bit weaker defensively in Generation 2. But Exeggutor's offensive tools have aged very well in this generation. Although a lot of Pokemon don't mind being put to sleep now because of the new Sleep Talk mechanic, it's still useful to have a sleep setter. Nidoking is common for this purpose, as are various other Pokemon. And Exeggutor is one of the best sleep setters available in Gen 2 still. Explosion also has an even higher base power than it did back in Gen 1, with 250, meaning that's an effective 500 base power considering the defense halving effect. Exeggutor also has a better grass stab option now with access to Giga Drain, which is 60 power compared to Mega Drain's 40. Still not fantastic compared to modern options, but this is pretty significant, especially because the new most common Dark type, Tyranitar, happens to be weak to grass. So Exeggutor, compared to other Psychic types, can actually hold its its own against Tyranitar quite well. Another new offensive tool that Exeggutor can take advantage of in Gen 2 OU is Thief. If you don't equip Exeggutor with an item and it uses Thief, it will steal an enemy's item, which is great to remove leftovers from key targets. The concept of held items were introduced in Generation 2, with leftovers being by far the most common and powerful of them. Enemies like Snorlax, Zapdos, and Skarmory abuse leftovers for massive amounts of healing across the game. Thief is one of the most common offensive tools in Gen 2 OU for this reason, and it has immense long-term value. So Exeggutor represents a significant amount of offensive pressure all in one package, with access to all three of the premier offensive tools in Gen 2. Sleep, Explosion, and Item Removal. The new move Hidden Power can also be used for coverage, commonly fire coverage, which can hit enemy steel and grass types. In a very slow-paced metagame, Exeggutor is a beacon of offensive power, and is very important to help break down these bulky threats like Snorlax and Zapdos. But beyond Gen 2, Exeggutor's viability started to dwindle. In Generation 3, Exeggutor is not a terrible choice, but it is a far cry from the prominent metagame force it once was in the prior two generations, and the Pokemon is no longer ranked in OU. Exeggutor did gain the new ability Chlorophyll in Gen 3, which gives it a unique identity as a sun threat, Chlorophyll granting double speed in the sun, but the overall metagame was not kind to Exeggutor. As a sleep user, Exeggutor now had some serious competition, with the all-new Breloom introduced in Gen 3, and that once powerful psychic typing was now more of a liability than an advantage. Tyranitar was significantly buffed in Generation 3 and became the #1 Pokemon in the metagame, thanks to its new Sandstream ability and various new offensive tools at its disposal. The worst part about this is that bug coverage was now more common than ever, because bug type is able to hit key metagame Pokemon like Celebi, Starmie, and Claydol. Exeggutor has been caught in the crossfire of the rise in bug coverage. Dugtrio is notably able to trap and eliminate Exeggutor with Hidden Power Bug, and Tyranitar can easily live Exeggutor's Giga Drain and KO it back with a bug move. Having access to Sleep Powder, Item Removal, and Explosion all on one Pokemon still does have its value actually, but Exeggutor is a bit slow, with only 55 base speed, making it a pretty poor sleep lead. It also doesn't help that an all-new Grass Psychic type Pokemon was released that largely outclassed everything Exeggutor could do. That is of course Celebi. Exeggutor is not unviable in Gen 3 OU, but it is a little bit difficult to fit on teams, and a Celebi or a different sleep user is generally preferred. Generation 4 was not kind to Exeggutor either. Explosion was still a good move for its base power, but it could no longer disrupt the enemy, as self-KOs no longer prevented the enemy from taking their turn anymore. On top of this, the new move U-Turn was added to the game, which quickly became one of the most popular competitive moves. A strong bug-type attack that also allowed you to pivot. Being ×4 weak to U-Turn is a significant disadvantage. If Tyranitar was difficult to handle in Gen 3 OU, it's even worse now because Crunch is now a physical attack and can cleanly one-hit KO you. The power level continued to rise from generation to generation, and Exeggutor's unique toolkit of access to Sleep, Explosion, and Item Removal all in one was just no longer valuable anymore. It certainly didn't help that Knockoff was so significantly buffed in Generation 6, basically blanket nerfing anything weak to Dark. The way offense works in modern generations is different now, using a lot of high-speed glass cannon Pokemon that hit hard and outrun everything, or powerful boost sweepers that can snowball to victory. And today, Exeggutor struggles to function or find much of a place for itself on competitive teams. Exeggutor has suffered from overall power creep, and also its typing getting worse over time, with Bug and Dark weakness being very disadvantageous as the series went on. But Exeggutor's top tier status in Generation 1 and 2 can never be taken away. People still play these formats to this day, and this is Exeggutor's home as an old gen titan. Once a force to be reckoned with in OU, now enjoying his retirement from competitive in the ZU tier. I have always enjoyed the fact that this largely overlooked Pokemon from the original 150 was such an offensive powerhouse in the first two generations of competitive.